Hey folks, welcome back to Stationeers. I have a new microphone. Hopefully this will be much more clear and sound a little better. I can't do anything about the squeaky nasal voice because that's what I was born with. This time we're going to try and get this automation working. And you guys are going to get to see how the sausage is made. I'm going to work on this code live as we go. Try to record this. So you can see my horrible spaghetti code and what a mess I'm making things. But first, let's go hydrate so we get a fresh start here. Also, there has been another update to the game. The only thing I can think of off the top of my head is sensor kits now have a nifty new model. That looks pretty cool. And they made some other changes too. Some adjustments to the save system. But our focus is going to be on automating that furnace. This may be a shorter video, it may not be. Sort of experimented a bit. There's some ideas. But this may just end up being a bit of a mess. Let's go ahead and get our hardware in place. I think we'll put that there. And I know from my testing that this locker is going to be in my way. So that's fixed. Let's give this stuff some name. All right. So what we want to do is we want to be able to feed a temperature and a pressure target into these memory chips and have the furnace automatically go to those targets. Yeah. Let's get that wired up. We're going to keep these switches for the pumps behind the furnace in place for now because we need some way to manually control those. I think to start with, we're going to set these to the temperature and pressure in a range that should be okay for Inconel. So if we look at that, that has a wide temperature range, 600 Kelvin up to 100,000 Kelvin, but a very narrow pressure range, 23.5 to 24 megapascals. So for the pressure, we're going to put it in the middle of that range. We'll set the temperature to 1,000. Yeah. So in my experiments, what I discovered was that you have to give it a little bit of leeway, because otherwise it will continue to always overshoot or undershoot the targets. So you have to give it a point where it says that's good enough. Go ahead and clear that off. And like I said, we're going to see how the sausage is made today. This is not going to be pretty. I'm far from an expert, but we're going to give it a shot. And we'll start down here. Okay, that gives us our 5 devices: the furnace itself, the 2 memory chips that we're going to use to set our targets, and the hot and cold gas pumps on the input side of the furnace. And we're going to use 2 registers to store the target temperature and target pressure, and 2 more registers to store the current pressure and temperature in the furnace. Okay. So this is where we'll start. Let's start by reading in these 4 values. All right. Well, that's the easy part done with, I guess. Let's go ahead and take this. Oh, wait. Export. Turn it on. Turn it off. Let's get our pin set up. All right. Temp mem. Pressure mem. Hot pump. Cold pump. And nothing on that one. Turn it on. That works great. Let's see. We can test that, right? All right, so we know we're going to have 4 possible states. Either the pressure and temperature will be above the target, the pressure and temperature will both be below their targets, or some combination. The pressure will be high and the temperature will be low, or the temperature will be over the target and the pressure will be below the target. So let's set up a section of the program where each of those 4 scenarios is addressed. Actually, before we do that, we need to decide what's going to happen if we're close enough to our desired pressure and temperature. So let's set that up. We'll call it close enough. And when that happens, we know we want to turn off both of the input pumps and both of the input and output pumps that are integral to the furnace. Let's see, the furnace input and output pumps are oh, here we go. Setting input and setting output. All right, so if we're close enough, we'll send it to this. Okay. If we're close enough to the settings we want, we'll send it to this subroutine. It'll turn off all of the pumps and then sleep for 1 second. And then we'll jump back to the start. And actually, we can test this as it stands because after this, it will fall through. So what we can do is we can make sure this is working. This is the paranoia that developers get into. So the input pump is 0. The output pump, set it to 0 over and over. All right. It is working. Just to be sure, we want to keep that input pump turned all the way up anytime that it's on. All right, so let's see. What are our 4 states? We'll have a different subroutine for each one. Keeping the same naming convention of using leading lowercase but uppercase for multiple words within these tags, these labels for the lines. So if we're over on both, and in all cases we want to jump back to the start. Now let me take a moment to think about this. Are this all the possible states? This name I don't really like because it implies, okay, it's under temperature, but what it means is it's under temperature and over pressure. I don't know. All right, so now let's do the code that will decide which of these routines to go to. think what we'll do is set up 2 more registers. And each of these will be a non-zero value if they're true. So over temp, if it's over the target temperature, then that will be a 1. Or perhaps even how far over. We'll see how this plays out. So let's look at the pressure first. All right, so we're going to use SGT, which is set greater than. And if we go back to our functions and look at that, the register, in this case overpress, will be 1 if current press is greater than target press. Otherwise, it will be a 0. And same with the over temp register. Now, what's the best way to work with these? Maybe an and statement. If both of these are true, then we want to go to this one. Both are false, we want to go to this one. All right, let's try adding them together. We'll use register 6 for that. Now, if we add those together, then we'll either have 2, 1, or 0. If both are over their targets, then we'll have a 2. So BEQ, branch if equal to. So if register 6 is equal to 2, then we'll branch to over both.
Critical.
Okay, and we can use the same command, branch equal to 0, then we know that we're under on both. That sounds pretty good. Let's have us a sip, and we'll come back and work on the other cases. Let's take this stuff in with me. So I did just remember another thing in this update. They have changed water fillers, water bottle fillers. Existing water fillers, water bottle fillers are fine as they are. However, once you have them in kit form, they require power now. And this is, I think, pursuant to something that's going to be coming in the future where they're adding phase changes to liquids and gases. So we won't be able to move things through pipes if they are solids, I think. But as you can see, the new kit has a power connection. So we're going to just go ahead and tie that in. And that brings our system current. All right. All right, let's get back to it. So that will get us our, what do you call it, flow control for cases where the temperature and pressure are both above or both below their targets. Now, if we get past these two lines, we know that it's either that register 6 has a value of 1. We are either over on temperature and under on pressure, or over on pressure and under on temperature. And what we can do, if we know that it's a 1, which it will be at this point, we can see which one is a 1, and therefore know if that one's not a 1, then the other one must be. That said, before we start doing this, before we can test this, we need to make sure that we clear register 6 to be a 0. Is that right? No, that's wrong. It's move, I believe, actually, is the command. Yeah, there we go. we're moving a 0 into register 6. Okay. That way we can ensure that that's a 0. And once we get to this point, it may still be a 0. And once we're on this line, we know that it's not a 0 and not a 2. Let's see. We'll reuse register 6. We will set it to 0 again. I don't know that that's needed, but I want to be explicit that I am setting that to 0 again. All right, so SGT, set greater than. It's a 0. It will be set to a 1 if the current pressure is higher than the target pressure. Okay, if R6, register 6, is equal to 0, no, if it's equal to 1, then that will mean that, see, set greater than. If the current pressure is above, that means the pressure is high, the temperature is low. So if the temperature is low, then if it's equal to 1, we go to under temp. And if that isn't a 1, then current pressure is not greater than the target pressure. That means that the pressure is what's under. And then we just by default jump to under pressure. Okay. So if we're over on both temperature and pressure, we want both of the input pumps off. We still want to leave the input pump in the furnace on because we want to make sure we clear out that line. Set the output pump to full. We're under on both temperature and pressure. All right, if it's under on both temperature and pressure, we want to fill it with hot gas. If we're under on temperature but over on pressure, we've got to bleed it down because we can't increase the temperature without adding hot gas. And if we're over pressure, then we've still got to bleed it down. And if we're under pressure but over on temperature, then we add cold. And we turn off the output pump. Now, this is not going to work. This is not everything we need. If nothing else, we never reach our close enough condition. And we definitely want to get it to a point where it stops feeding gas in. But this is a starting place. So we're over on temperature and pressure. The input pumps are both off, and the output pump is turned on at full. If we're under both temperature and pressure, we add hot, turn off the output pump. If we're under the temperature but on pressure, we've got to bleed it down. We can't increase the temperature without adding gas. Therefore, output is on. Both the inputs are off until we can get the pressure down. If we're under on pressure, over on temperature, we add cold gas. Let's see what this does. I have a feeling it's going to bounce around. Okay, that's not going to work. It was setting our input pump to 0. Let's take a look, make sure we didn't blow up that pipe. Nope, it's still there. So why is it doing that? Why is it turning the input pump off? We should, just to make sure, add a line to always ensure the input pump is turned on, unless it's explicitly turned off by this subroutine. Okay, well, we're getting somewhere. Got our 1,000 degrees. Now we're in the neighborhood of the 23.75 megapascals. Unfortunately, we're bouncing. And this is where the finesse comes into this. Because this is never going to get exactly the set temperature and pressure. So it's always going to be attempting to overshoot or undershoot. But it is close to 1,000 degrees. It is close to 23.5 megapascals. Let's turn it off, vent this down. I'm gonna cycle those just to make sure that they are off. So now what we have to do is add a little granularity to this. So if we're over on both, we want the furnace to vent down over temperature and pressure. That means that we're going to have to add some cold. So I think in this scenario, we probably want to get below by half a megapascal. Maybe we'll come back to this. This one is the simplest. If we're under on both, then we know that we need to add hot, because that will add pressure and increase the temperature. If we're under on the temperature but over on the pressure, now this one's okay too, I think, for now. We're just going to let it vent. And if we're under on the pressure but over on temperature, then that's fairly simple as well. We add from this. We add cold if it's under on pressure but over on temperature. So I think the best question is, how far under are we? All right, so let's find out how far under are we. We'll reuse register 6. And we're going to subtract the target pressure, or the current pressure, from the target pressure. Make sure we've got our order of operations correct. All right, A minus B. So we're under pressure. Target pressure minus the current pressure will tell us how far under we are. And we can map that to, or can't we? Maybe we can map this to a value we can use to control how quickly we're adding pressure. Hmm. All right, so if we're under by, let's say, 1,000, 1 megapascal. So if the difference between our target and our current pressure is 1 megapascal. And we will set that to
power low.
all right. So if it's at least a megapascal off of target, then we just go full on. Uh, 50 megapascal or 50 liters on that pump. If it's not greater than 1,000, then we'll check for 500.
Hydration critical.
Let's think about how we're doing this. Yeah, we'll do it this way. Okay, so we're greater than 500, but if we got to this line, then we're less than 1,000. So we'll set the input pump to 10 liters instead of 50. Actually, I think the more efficient way to do this, we could turn the output and the hot pump off one time. Because we know there's no scenario in this section where we want either of those to be turned on. And if we are, let's see, we're under pressure, but we're over temperature, which means we can add cold. Okay, so if we're over 100 but less than 500 kilopascals off from our target, then we'll slowly add cold. And then if we're less than 100, we'll jump to close enough. This may be jumping the gun here because this doesn't check our temperature. But I've got to hydrate. So. All right, let's consider this. I don't know if there's any code in this section that would critically fail. But I think if we jump to close enough, yeah, I think we're probably not going to get what we want. But I don't think this will catastrophically fail.
Filter low.
If we're under temperature but over pressure, we're just venting. That works okay. So far. If we're under on both, we increase the temperature by adding hot gas. Should probably add something like this to that. We know we want the cold pump off and the output pump off. See how many degrees we're off. We'll store that in register 6. Don't want to set the input pumps higher than 50 liters. If in some scenario they both end up turned on at the same time, it will be no more than 100 liters per tick, and the input pump can clear it. That said, I should set the input pump on. Well, I'm setting it on every time through the loop. Okay, so at full hot, we set the input pump to 50, turn it on. Just like full cold. Okay, if we're close enough on that. Yeah, I still don't think this is right. Okay, so let's add a condition. If we get past these branch commands, then we know we're getting closer and closer to the target temperature. So we either need to jump back to the start or we need to jump to close enough. Here, it's going to be dependent on if we are close enough on the pressure as well. We know if we got here, the temperature's close enough already. So see, we're under on pressure. So let's store the difference in pressure into register 6 again. And if that is less than, what are we calling close enough? Say less than 100. So if register 6 is less than 100, we jump to close enough. Yeah. I had to double check my syntax here. Otherwise, we jump back to the start. Yeah. And now we can do the same thing for the temperature when we're under on pressure. goes the other way though. So we're over on temperature, but if the current temperature, subtract the target temperature, that'll be stored in register 6. And we'll say if we're within we're within 10 degrees. Yeah, I don't know if this is going to work or not, but we'll give it a shot. All right, let's go over it one more time. We're over on both temperature and pressure. We just want the output. If we're under on both, then we know we need to add heat. And depending on how close to the temperature, we'll add it slowly. This should actually be based on the pressure, I think. I'm not sure. If we're under on temperature and over on pressure, again, we just vent because we can't change the temperature without adding gas. If we're under on pressure but over on temperature, we add cold. I don't know. Let's try it and see if it blows up. Okay, we are adding heat. Now we're adding cool. So it gets to the target temperature pretty quickly and then bounces back and forth as it's adding more gas, either hot or cold. The output pump is set to 0, which is correct. But it's increasing very slowly though. Why is it increasing so slowly? Make sure they're both turned off and let it vent down. All right, it was under on pressure, and then very quickly got to the target temperature. So we were in this section of code most of the time. It's under press, which means it's over on temperature. It's almost like it was going into the slow fill too soon. The target pressure was more than 1,000 more. So register sticks should have been more than 1,000. So we should have been going to this. But there were going to be times when we were going to be under pressure, but also under temp, which would be under on both. But we were only slightly off on it. So we were coming into this section of code. We were well under the pressure, but we were not very far under the target temperature. So I should probably base this off of pressure too. And then if our target temperature is close enough, again, we jump to close enough. I don't know. The whole thing seems a little sketchy. All right. Still quickly gaining pressure. Now we should be getting close. $23.65993. Input pump is off. That's close enough. That would successfully make Inconel. Oh. Okay. This is all stable. It's not adding more. We haven't died in a fireball yet, so something's clearly wrong. All right, so let's think about if we wanted to make something other than Inconel. Astroloy, 30 megapascals to 40 megapascals, and 1,000 Kelvin to 100,000. That's a pretty broad range of both. So let's say temperature, we'll set it at 1200, pressure 35. Okay, pressure's coming up, temperature's coming up. Bouncing around a bit. Still haven't quite got to 1200. There's our 1200. And it's like, that's surprisingly close. Holy moly. Now let's pick something low pressure. See if it can vent down in a reasonable fashion. Not that one. They're all fairly high pressure. That's a narrow temperature band. Maybe we can try for targeting on temperature instead of pressure this time. So we got 950 to 1000 Kelvin. 25 megapascals. So we'll say 27 megapascals and 975 Kelvin. Let's see, 970 Kelvin, 27 megapascal.
Hydration critical.
Damn. That's pretty close. Huh. All right. Well, let's what was that? That is a hot furnace. Okay. All right, all right. Turn that off. Vent everything down.
Power low.
Let's go have a sip. Okay, so we have what appears to be a working system. I don't have materials I need to test that with. Let's see if we can do waspable. I mean, I'm fairly certain we can, but so we'll call it 600 Kelvin and 75 megapascal. That's a lot of pressure. Is this thing gonna blow up and kill me? About 51. Doesn't this get a little sketchy around? A little sketchy around 50 megapascals? Alright. Okay. I'm convinced. Oosh. Yeah. Alright. Now, of course, this is only part of the system. We could tell it a temperature and a pressure and set it, and it'll go. But, of course, we don't have an automatic system to feed these values in. We'll do that at some point in the future. But right now, I am pretty tickled with it. Yeah. Oh. Unfortunately, this is all running on battery power. That brings us back to the other issue. We are going to have to improve our power production. That might be next episode. But right now, we have apparently working automated advanced furnace temperature and pressure controls. Wow. I'll clean up this code and add some comments to it and probably put it on the workshop here in a few minutes. But yeah, use it at your own risk, because frankly, the fact that it hasn't blown up yet makes me think I've missed something. But yeah, I think we're there, guys. As always, I'd love to hear from you folks. Comments on the new microphone. Let me know what you think. Suggestions, comments of any sort. I always enjoy hearing from you guys in the comments, and thank you for hanging out and letting me embarrass myself with terrible code. I'll catch you guys next time. Thanks.